That's where they're at right now.
We are live.
Okay, so we're going to get started. Miss Donnelly, if you guys can pay attention, we're going to broadcast. We're broadcasting live now, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about CoSpaces EDU, and then we're also going to take some student questions. So if you want to get started, we're happy to have you here today.
Awesome. I'm so excited to be here with Denise's class and with Mandy today. So we're talking about CoSpaces, and I'm going to tell you that I got connected to, and I'm sorry, Denise, I'm calling you Denise instead of Miss Wright. I apologize. I'm here with Miss Wright, and it's so cool to be connected with these folks because all of us have been connected using social media. So none of us met at a conference first and then said, oh, let's get connected. Well, I guess me and Mandy maybe could have, but most of us have connected first through social media and then through conferences and connections. And one of the ways that I know Miss Wright is by having an opportunity to talk to her about augmented, virtual, and mixed reality. So talking about immersive technology. And so I want to say right off the bat, we got AR, VR, and EDU, a chat started on Twitter. Every Wednesday night, we'll have one tonight. And we got one started about almost a year ago. And Ms. Wright joined in and shared her passion for science and what she's using within augmented reality. And then from there, it's just continued to blossom into so much more. It's just such an incredible community to talk about the resources we're using. And from my perspective, I only get to use it with teachers. So it's kind of a bummer because Miss Wright and Froelich get to go with students and say, hey guys, let me go show you this cool technology, and they get to see your faces, whereas I have to live through them because they get to enjoy the fun of that. I show my own kids, but there's only 3 of them and they're in a bad mood. They're not excited about how cool the tool is anyway. But for the most part, I only get to see through your lens. So I'm really excited to share how I've been using CoSpaces and what can be used in the classroom. So what I'll start off doing is kind of walking you through a scene that I set up and talk to you about how I did that. And then from there, we could talk about, beyond what I just showed you or questions about what I just showed you. And I'll get started. Does that sound good, guys?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mandy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, I am, again, Mrs. Freilich, guys, and I am in Wisconsin, tech director here, and I'm super excited to find out about CoSpaces too, because I have a whole bunch of high school kids who want to figure it out. So you guys are doing this in 6th grade, and I'm teaching my high schoolers, so that is pretty awesome. So great job.
That is awesome. And Miss Wright, do you want to go ahead and quickly introduce yourself? Because I know we talked before we got started live, but this is recorded on YouTube, so just in case.
Yeah, sure. My name is Mrs. Wright. I'm located in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I'm a STEM educator, and I teach grades 6 through 8. So we are excited to be broadcasting live here and talking CoSpaces EDU and having some wonderful student projects out there being developed and sharing that passion for virtual reality. So we're excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so pumped. So I'll go ahead and get started. But when Miss Wright got in touch with me, she was like, hey, what do you think about stopping in and talking about some technologies? And I was like, oh, I have all these things in my mind that we could talk about. I actually really wanted to do some AR Kit apps this week. Just because I'm geeking out on that this week. But with Mandy asking about that from that scene, I thought, oh, what a tie-in. We can just totally, cover this concept and work out to the benefit of other people that might have questions about it. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and screen share, and I'm going to let you guys see my screen and talk to you a little bit about getting set up. All right, I'll go right into CoSpaces. Okay, so when you first arrive onto CoSpaces, you're going to have a chance. Let me go ahead and go back. You'll have a chance to go between the 2 windows of either the Maker or the EDU. And this is so new. Like, this just happened past, I don't know, a few months that things have been changing. And even still, like as of this week, there's even changes that are being made as far as what each side has available to them. So I was talking to a few folks over at CoSpaces, showing them some lesson plans and some work that I was working on. And they were like, well, that's going to change. You know, there's some things coming up. So I may not be completely online with everything. So I'm sure that they'll let me know if I got something wrong, and we'll add a note in later. But here, if you come over to the maker side, that is free. Of course, EDU is something that is paid for. And since Ms. Wright's class has access to EDU, I'll go ahead and cover that, since that's something that the students are inside of right now. When you do log in, you have a chance to see your classes. So the first thing you'll actually see is, you know, like what classes you're in. And I created a test class as a teacher. I can load my students in here, and I can have access to my students. But what I'm going to cover is under my spaces. Just like the students, I created some spaces. You have a welcome to CoSpaces where you can go and explore that space. And then I just created something for fun. And then recently I put in something to demonstrate how to load a 360 and what you can do with that. So I'm going to go ahead and just quickly create my space and talk you through how I'm doing that, because I'm going to replicate that. And so if I go into create space, it's going to bring me into an empty plane. And I can click and drag around. So anywhere on my plane, if I want to click and drag around, I can look from multiple angles. What you're seeing right here is a camera. And what that's letting you know is when somebody arrives in your space, this is what they're going to be looking at. And I can actually adjust my camera to be placed where I want it to focus. So if I want it to be rotated because I have a new scene that I want it to be focused on, I can do that. I can also I'm actually on my computer, so I can go in and out inside of my screen just by pinching, zooming in, and zooming out. And what I'm going to start off doing is adding something to the library, from the library here. And the way that I would kind of talk to you about you have a library of characters and items that you would load on your space. Your environment is what is wrapped around your space. So wherever you want to go, you would, of course, choose your environment down here just by selecting one of the 10 that they have. The only animated environment they have available right now is the top of the water right here. So if I select the top of the water, you'll be able to see this here moving. And so as I add things on top or kind of in the water space, then you would be able to see this animated water around me. But what I'm going to do is upload a 360 photo, because that's something that I had talked to Ms. Wright about. And I think this is an important skill, because as you're designing and developing things like creating your own 360 photos, then you can upload them here. It's not a video, so you're essentially just loading a bunch of photos that are all wrapped together. I'm going to go ahead and type in 360 because I have a couple 360s in here. And let's see what I can come up with. Right. So this is the screen that I had loaded from before. So I'm going to choose that one. And this is actually on the stage at ISTE. After ISTE was done with our Ignite this year, I hopped up on the screen and got to capture a couple lots of images before finally they kicked me off and said, hey, everybody get out. But funny enough, Mandy was in this picture. So as soon as this loads, you can see here that it would show me that screen. Now it takes it a second because it's loading something pretty large. Whenever you're dealing with 360 photos, it's not one photo. For those students that have already started creating some, you know it's multiple photos. All stitched together. So I'm going to click environment so that I can make this top of the screen go away and we can get a full picture view. And now if I click and drag around on my screen, I can then get a view from where I took this picture. And again, there's Mandy right there. And other friends that were part of that scene. And so this is the scene after the fact. So we had people sitting here, and I was actually talking to them about mixed reality. And as well as many other people were talking to them. So up here on the stage, I did not get to get all my picture in because it kicked me off. So if you notice right here, is you have a black space here, and that's because I didn't get to capture every little spot because it kicked me out. So from here, I said, you know what, this is really cool that we can load our 360s in CoSpaces, but what makes CoSpaces so cool is I can actually layer objects on top of my 360. So I have not found anything like this that would allow us to do this much interaction other than CoSpaces. So typically, I would just come over here to my library and grab some items, which I can. I can grab this little bunny. And if I put this bunny on here, you guys can see it's really small in contrast to my huge 360 image that's really large. So I'm just gonna, as it's highlighted, I can click this button and just pull, oops. Let's see, that should make it larger. Oh, it is, there we go. So as I'm clicking and dragging up, my item got larger and larger. I can rotate it by selecting this, and it gives me all of the areas that I can see. And you can see, because this is a 360, I might have to manipulate this a little bit to line up to make it give the illusion that it is really sitting there. So I have the option by selecting this right here to manipulate my 3D objects a little bit better than just clicking and dragging and spinning. And then once I load my object there, I can load more. And I'm going to show you what I did, though, is instead of just using these low poly objects, I went over to characters, and this is a new one. We did have characters in our objects that were there before, but with our characters now, we actually have a lot more options. So I think this is the character that I had brought for myself initially. Again, I'm going to choose the word library right here to drop that window down. I'm going to select that object, which is obviously not matching up here very well. So if I click off and click back on, it looks a lot better. So I'm going to click up and drag, and I'm going to make this person fit the size that's more realistic. What I will tell you is if I take this person and I put them the same size right here, it would not look realistic. I would have to make it much smaller, because look at the size of the people here. So as you're going through, you're going to have to deal with scale. You're going to have to deal with, you know, when you're matching up objects into your image, it has to look realistic. And that looks about realistic for size when comparison to that bunny in comparison to the stage. Maybe I can go a little bit larger. So if I come a little bit larger, there we go. So as I'm looking around, I'm then standing in my space. This is what I love about these characters, and I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at these characters yet, but if I select my character once, I can still rotate it around, but if I right-click my character, I then have all these features here, and you guys have probably already started doing that because I heard you were using some code already. But if I right-click my object here, I can name my object. So this is called Regular Woman, but I'm going to go ahead and just name it Jamie. And then I can come down here and I can, let me push enter here. And then when I come over here, I can actually speak. Hello, Mrs. Right, class. All right, so I can, and you know, it's so sad I didn't push enter again. So while I'm doing this, I can either think it or speak it. And when this character is selected, as people are going through, they can see that person speaking or thinking, right? So you're getting a concept about what is going on in that person's head. And this person still looks like a guy. I don't like that. But from the angle, in this case, you know, I feel like you should be able to see the back of the hair or something, or maybe have the hair hanging down, make it a little bit more, because I showed this to my family and they're like, who's that guy up there? Is that supposed to be you? I'm like, no, that's me. Just my hair's pulled back in this. So all of the characters do have their hair pulled back, but it would be nice to have some more options in that area. So now you can see with my character, I have named it, and I've given it a chance to say something. But here is the part that I think is like, ah, the sky's opened up, because now I can give action to my character without having a code. And you guys know with Blockly, the code is really like just very small movement. You're not dealing with like the full body, like doing different things. You're talking about just moving forward or backwards. But with these characters, I can actually, you know, say, yeah, I agree with this. I really like this new animation feature. Or I can cheer, or I can clap and say, woohoo, glad to be here. And so I can go through these different emotions and moods here, and I can give your class a handshake, Miss Wright. And so as you go through, though, I can even make this person sit down. And I think that was important too, because in the audience, sometimes I had to have people sitting down and some people standing up. So I can go through and see here, and I can add people that are actually layered in the chairs. And so if I go back here and I add a character now from my library, let's add a guy here. So this guy is located here. Let's go ahead and click off. And I'm going to make him much larger because obviously he's way too small. All right, so here's my character. And now I'm going to add, and I'm just going to compare my character to this little guy over here, Curran. Obviously way too large. And so I want to make him look a little bit more realistic. And the farther back that I want to place him, like if I want him to stand way back here in the aisle, obviously he's not going to be floating in the sky. That's the way he looks. So what I have to do then is shrink his character to make him look like he's farther back, right? So it gives that illusion that he is in a different space, all based upon his size. So here, I'm going to make my character look a little bit more realistic in size. And when I do that, I'm also going to animate him by right-clicking and then coming over here to this animation. And I'm going to have him sit down. Yeah, probably not let down like that, just like that. Okay, and then I can take my character and have him placed right here. So now he looks a little bit more realistic. Okay, maybe I'll bring him down just a hair, and then I can kind of place him and just have him put in a spot that looks, whoops, sorry about that, that looks more realistic. All right, I think I stopped screen sharing on accident, so let me try that again. All right. And so once, and is everybody okay, by the way? I'm not checking in on you guys, so if you have questions, I'll definitely take some here in a minute. But I'm going to show you something really, really, really cool and important in this, because I think this is going to be a key when you're adding your own 360s. But here's my character sitting down. This is realistic. But what if I brought my character right here and had him sit down? That obviously is not realistic. That would stand out. But if I want to load my characters there, CoSpaces did something super, super cool. And what they did is they allowed me to add a character or an object or anything else. I'm going to go ahead and make that person a lot taller. I'm going to rotate her around. Oop. That's about right. Now I'm going to have her stand. So I'm going to have to probably shrink her down a little bit more to make her look like she's a little bit farther away. But I'm going to have her stand right here. And right now, you know that she can't stand next to that chair when we have that in the way. So what they do allow is a masking tool. And if I come down here and I come to, let's see. I'm going to come down and create a block, and it could be something flat, it could be something, you know, with letters, it could be something like rounded. In this case, I'm just going to make something very simple, and I'm just going to add this screen right here. Okay, let me click this again so it goes away, and then click off and click back on, and I'm going to just take this object that needs to be obviously a lot larger, and I'm going to rotate it around so you can get a feel of what this looks like. So I just took one of their objects. It could be any of them. And now when I click on here, though, I can make some adjustments to how long it is, how tall it is. So I want this to kind of match up with this lady here. And I'm going to go ahead and just come like this. And I'm just going to match up this general area here. And it's still, you can see it's kind of tilted wrong. I can come over here certainly and adjust that just a hair, just so it matches the alignment. So I'm rotating here and then I'm adjusting size here. So I can just continue to make that match where I want it to be. So I'm going to make it just right about there. Okay. So here's the cool part, is that this object now can be masked, M-A-S-K. Okay, so I'm going to right-click my object here, not my person, but this little frame that I created. And I'm going to come up here to mask it. And when I do that, bam, now it looks like all I could see is what's in front of it. So I'm going to show you what happens when I click and drag this object around, okay? So I'm going to click and drag it around. So I can actually mask my character. It's only going to show what's on the screen. It's going to essentially delete out whatever CoSpace object you've added, and it's only going to show what's on your 360. So the cool thing about this is that I can make that look more realistic with that person standing there, because now, and I'm going to make her a little bit shorter. There we go. So now it looks like she really is standing behind an object. And then I have my character here that I haven't animated. So I'm going to right click my character and I'm going to have him be angry because, boy, he really hates mixed reality. This person here is going to have, she's going to be super excited. So she's going to dance, you know, because she's all about, you know, dancing, which I want to show you something real quick. Based upon the layer of where my character is and where this mask is, you can see parts of my character coming through. And that's because where it's located is really close. It's almost like going through the body. So I can actually bring my character back farther and just have her not affected by how close that is. And it's hard for us to see from this angle, just because I'm looking from the middle. One thing that I am doing is I'm essentially looking through a lens of, I'm looking through the lens, and I'm just getting a terrible view because my screen here got too large. Go ahead and just minimize this, see if it gives me a better view or if it's just totally gone. Okay. I might have to come out and come back in, but regardless, is when I'm looking at this, I then can have my objects layered in different spots, and I can also walk around my space. But in this case, it's a 360. So it's not like I'm really on a plane. I'm literally just looking around, because obviously we're not sitting there right now in San Antonio. We're actually just looking at one photo here, one photo here, one photo here, photo here, photo here, photo here. That's what our 360 is. It's just a bunch of photos. But it gives me the illusion that I'm standing there because the photos are all around me. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you what this looks like. So if I can, I lost my button over here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just go back home and then see if I can get my screen back. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go back into my space. And when I go in here, it will load that 360. It will load my characters. Now I'm going to go ahead and play that. And see how she's still kind of coming through. I probably want to bring her back a little bit farther and adjust that, or bring that masked object a little bit closer to me. So I'm able to do that as well. There goes that angry guy about mixed reality. And there I am, totally shocked. What was I thinking trying to do a 5-minute ignite again in front of all these people? And then here is my random rabbit that I can animate. Now I can't animate it the same way as I'm animating my characters, but I can animate through Blockly, which is what most of you are doing here. So now I'm going to go back. And I'm going to look and show you guys that we've added a couple objects in here. We've added an environment. We've added some animation through our characters. And then we've done that all through one scene. Now we can add multiple scenes in here, which might be something that Miss Wright is having you do right now. But I'm going to show you very little that I know, and I'm probably going to mess up. I feel like every time I do this is always trial and error. I'm going to do a little bit of coding with our bunny here. And so the first thing that I had to learn in using Blockly is I have to actually label my character. When it wasn't labeled, I couldn't do anything with it. So I right-clicked my character. Okay, it looks like it already has a name of Rabbit, which I'm good with. And I'm going to use it in Blockly. And here I am. I'm going to go ahead and instead of looking at coding, I'm going to look at, okay, I'm going to look at Blockly right here. And so now I'm going to create some action here. I'm going to, let's see. All right, so I'm going to say on the event of, and I'm going to add in this character here. And see, this is always where I come up with trial and error because I feel like, okay. Funny. Right. Okay, on activation of bunny, so what I did is I essentially came up here and I made sure it was named. I turned on the use in Blockly, which wasn't there before. This is something that is fairly new. I can show its name if I want to. So if people are trying to figure out what is that thing down there, or if I want to identify the name as something different, maybe their character's in a book and I want to describe that character, I could do that there. And then over here on activation of the bunny, I'm going to actually give it some action. And so the bunny says, and I can give it a phrase, the bunny can turn a different color. It can think something. It can, let's see. The bunny can move. So that's what I'm going to have it do, is the bunny is going to move. I'm going to pull this up. So on activation of bunny, it's going to move 1 meter forward in 1 second. So I can change all of that to be whatever I want it to be. I can say, no, I want it to be much faster. I want it to be really slow. I want it to move really far. I want it to move really, you know, a short distance. I've had a rocket shoot up out of the sky. I've had, you know, different items that I've put in here, just do various things. An airplane shoot through the room. So I can do that. And now I can go in here and play. This is really, I'll be honest with you, I learned more just by clicking here. And you guys can see my bunny, when I clicked on my bunny, when I activated my bunny, it moved 1 meter. Now I can go back and I can keep on making it move and I can keep on adjusting that just by going back into my code and looking and seeing what that bunny's doing. So one thing that I can do is I have an like on activate of, I know that in the past I have had it just start just by it arriving in the scene. Like here, if I hover over the bunny, it can do something, collision. So by having some of these different options here, I can look and I can have things repeat. So if I want to have the bunny keep moving, repeating several times. And so there are several different things that you can have it do. Again, this is like out of my skill set for sure, but it's just fun to just play with it and to see what it's capable of doing. And a lot of it, to me, the reason why this is so cool is it's just problem solving, you know, it's just, let me try this, let's see what happens. Let me try this, let's see what happens. So I can go through this and I can just, you know, have several different options and essentially just get these actions, which is what your students are probably figuring out, unless you have somebody like awesome like Miss Wright who's teaching you guys coding probably in the first week of school. But that wasn't my case. I've never learned coding, and this was all done just through play and kind of exploration. So that is some of the things that I did. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. I'm going to come back in. And you guys either are totally overwhelmed and like, what did you just do? Or you got some good things, ideas to pull with it. Or I'm going to teach Mrs. Donnelly how to do that because she doesn't know how to use Blockly, because I'm good for all of it. So why don't we start off, Mandy, if you don't mind just kind of sharing something that you think could be applicable, or if you have a question, and then we're going to move over to our kids.
The only question that I had is, once you apply the 360 image that you did, you said that the camera shows your view. So the camera, you can't use that anymore to help you create your view from there?
You know, wherever I left off and share it is where it arrives. So if I actually am looking at a different screen, and when I share that, then it actually arrives in that spot the next time. That was a really good question, because when we're when we're in our own space, and I know you can load it in the library, you can go into your camera and you can adjust that too. But in this case, because I was looking at that and I hadn't adjusted my camera at all, it immediately just always uses whatever the last view was. And I just kind of picture out what I want it to be, and then I choose, you know, share out, and from that link, then that's what's shared out.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
Denise, are your students ready to go?
I think I'm going to have one of them students come up and just, if you don't mind, they're going to talk about their space, and they can talk about what they have designed up to this point. Do I have a volunteer? Okay, Lily, do you want to come over here and sit down in front of the camera and just tell them what you've done and what you've designed so far?
And maybe ask a few questions.
Yes, sure. This is Lily.
Hi.
Have a seat.
Hi. Welcome, Lily.
Hi, Lily.
What is your project on?
My friend and I, we are doing a project on sea turtles and how they are disappearing very fast, and some ways that we can help it so they're not like endangered, or help them so they're not, and help like maybe baby sea turtles getting to the ocean, because there's a lot of problems with that.
Yeah, well, I'm laughing because you're fixing your hair, and even adults think about their hair, by the way. Well, I will tell you, in light of your context of what is important to you, and you guys are solving problems in your area and issues that you're having, I think it's really interesting you're talking about sea turtles, because I have like no connection to sea turtles whatsoever. Being here in Texas, I grew up in California. That really wasn't something that I was ever really exposed to. So I think it's super cool where you're located to be able to connect those dots and to find significance in that. So do you want her to share her space with us? And do you have access to it in the EDU account?
You want to tell about some of the things you coded?
Oh yeah, we're trying to we're coding like the sea turtles to move, and we're making it so they're like just hatchlings. And I also do have a question.
Yeah.
So for one of the things I'm doing, I'm making like a little walkway for them to be able to get to shore safely, because that's also one of my ideas. And it's diagonal, and when I try to code them so they can move, they just end up kind of floating. How do I get it so they don't do that when I'm coding them?
Yeah, it sounds like your rotation and things of that sort that you need to modify inside of Blockly. So it's so funny. Are you using a 360, or are you using just one of their environments?
We're using the animated environment, the ocean.
Okay, awesome. So the one that's on top of the ocean. So when you're getting them to go onto a platform, you're probably having to layer something on top of the water, right? Like, is that their escape?
Yeah, she said, are you doing some layering?
Yes, we have done that.
Gigi's saying yes. Her partner's saying yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes that's an interesting one, because when you're layering different things, essentially the way that you're looking at it can look different in different views, right? So I was showing you guys one view with one person sitting there, but when I tried to look at them in different views, you kind of get a different experience, because it's moving maybe at a different rate based upon how close or far away things are. We're giving these illusions but really they're not in those spaces. So when you're trying to manipulate your object, what I would recommend is trying to lay it in a position to where you never see it rotated that way. So if you have your character, if you have your sea turtle here, try to layer it in a way that looks okay in another slant. So no matter as it's moving, it still looks normal as it's progressing through, because I know that you can even have it rotate as you're going through in Blockly. Have they had a chance to look at that at all?
Yeah, they've been programming a little bit in Blockly. I had them, executing 3 objects in parallel. We did that coding as well as getting something to move and turn. We worked on that. And then a lot of the times they've been sitting here and exploring themselves as well. So, and they're doing a really good job with it. So I'm hoping to have some great projects and maybe a winning project. Let's hope. Let's hope.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Anybody else want to share in the classroom with something that they've done?
Yes,
Do you have anybody else? Oh, Peyton, you want to come over and ask something? Come here. Thank you, Lily.
I appreciate it, Lily.
Hi, Lily. Okay. Come on, sit down in the chair.
And when the kids are done with their questions, I actually have a question for them as well.
Okay. This is really quick. We have only a few minutes, and then we're going to answer our question, okay? But this is Peyton. So Peyton, do you have a question? Go ahead and ask.
Are we able to throw things in CoSpaces?
Are you able to throw things? He's asking about the animation feature, I guess.
Yeah. So inside of your character, so let me go ahead and just see what actions we have. I'm going to come out of code here, and I'm going to go over to my character. I'm going to look at something. I'm not sharing my screen here, but I know that some of the animations that they have, I'm going to share some of them with you. I could be aggressive. So, that character that was like, he was making like a really angry face and like his fist was coming out. Technically, you could grab an object, maybe that looks like he's holding it, have it move from a specific location in Blockly and release and have a movement. There's a lot of things that you'll have to set up, but essentially if you wanted to make it look like it's being thrown and something's releasing at that moment, and you can look and see and just play with it, just come back and troubleshoot and see at the release, how often do I have to have this happen? As quick, when will it look natural to have something release and start a movement and then repeat and start a movement? So those repeating factors, so you can actually make something look like it's being thrown. And I want to say that there is.
Okay, guys. We have some talking because our students are looking at the clock and they're like, okay, it's almost time for us to move on.
I know. Oh, let's go. Let's move on.
Do we have a last question? Do we have a question that we want to answer? Okay. I'm going to go collect some Chromebooks, okay?
Well, I think Mandy had a question for your class.
Wait a second. I have one last question. Go ahead, Mandy.
Okay. So here's my question. Mrs. Wright, you can get back to me on any of their recommendations, okay?
All right.
My high school students are creating underwater ecosystems, rivers or oceans or lakes. And I'm wondering if you have any recommendations for them as they start to build and learn this stuff that I could give to them, since you guys have already learned it. So if you guys have any recommendations for them, you can give them to Mrs. Wright and she'll pass it on to me, okay?
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to mute you because I've got some kids getting ready to go to their next period class.
Awesome, thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you for having a session with us.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Hey, so Mandy, is there any other questions that you have that you can think of now that it's just you and I that would be applicable for that class?
So I have the ideas that I've gotten for what they want to do is, again, the ecosystem for under the water, which I feel is going to be a little challenging for the simple fact that, like, in a lake, one of the things that the teacher wanted the students to build is, like, I've never been underwater in a lake, but I'm imagining that if I was, you would be able to see kind of the structure underneath the lake bed and the wall, kind of the walls of the lake and the shore of the lake where it comes up, things like that. And I'm not sure how to be able to do that. So it's basically going to have a structure on the bottom that kind of goes up a little bit so that you're going up to the shore. And I'm not sure if that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
The second way that a teacher wants to use it is to recreate an ancient civilization, which I think that would be a little bit easier. Like, I feel like that would be a little bit easier to recreate.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I know they're going to want to do is to bring in their own objects. When I was playing with it, like, I found that if you had a transparent image, like you could Google a transparent image and bring that in, and it would actually go into CoSpaces, but then you couldn't see the back of it. Like, there was no backside. So do you have any recommendations for that?
Yeah, they actually have a really cool feature in there where it gives you a lot of flexibility beyond just the library. I don't know, I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so if you are, I apologize.
Nope.
I'm going to go ahead and screen share something for you because I think that you'll find some use out of that. Hey, Denise. We're talking about underwater and some options here. So can you see my screen right now in CoSpaces?
Yeah, I can.
So inside of here in the underwater feature, we don't see the top of the water, and we don't see, we do see down at the bottom, but like you said, like that's not, we're not necessarily going up out of the water. But what you can do is still give an illusion of coming out of the water. Essentially, you said some, looking at some, when you're uploading an image from the website or from a website from Bing is what they're searching through. You're just doing flat objects. But what you can do is take some of their blocks, their building blocks.
Jamie, I'm sorry, can you present your screen?
Yeah, is it not?
Nope.
Okay, let me stop sharing and try one more time. Thank you for, let's see.
There we go.
I think I had you as my presenter. All right, can you see that screen okay?
Yep, now I can.
Awesome. So underneath the water, I can't see up above. I can't see out of the water, but I can be at the floor of the ocean, let's say. I can certainly adjust, where we're starting at, what we're looking at. But down here in the library, I can go to building blocks, and these building blocks will allow me to start off with something, but adjust it. So let's say I'm trying to, build some rocks, and maybe rocks aren't on there, but I need to, I need to show that still. I can still start somewhere, and then I can just modify and adjust what that would look like. So even if it's not something that's already there inside of the library, I can still come out here and kind of build something that would be that space that they are maybe showing a shore going up, even if it's not really happening. But through our view, we have no idea otherwise, because all we can see is that it looks like it's coming up out of the water.
Okay.
So I can build up kind of a mountain range area that is even, I can layer that. So I can angle this here and then have it modified here and such. So, so I can do several different things with this object to give it some illusion of some things happening that might help that, that them be able to show what they're trying to accomplish in it. We don't necessarily have to code that. That's just kind of building your own environment with the restrictions of what's already currently in the library. Do you think that would be helpful?
Yep, for sure.
Awesome. I can't remember your second question though. I think that was your first.
Okay, yeah, so it was that, and then it was, so for example, when they create their lake ecosystem, they're going to need fish like trout.
Right.
So it's like very specific. So I had gone into Google Images and searched and found a trout image. And I made sure that it had a transparent background. I imported that into CoSpaces, and then And then like how that has the white background, it didn't have that white background. It actually looked like a fish.
Yeah, you had a ping image that gave a transparent background. Okay, I get what you're saying now. Okay.
But is there like, can you animate that and then it'll always just be that flat image, correct?
It will be, but what you can do is build that object. So that sounds insane and like super detailed and a lot of work, but you could have them come over here to their blocks and essentially try to recreate and modify different shapes that would in turn build this trout that I think would be kind of cool, you know, to see what they come up with. They can add different, I know that they can add different textures to it as well, which is really cool because, you know, then you can make it look more realistic. And then you can even have it attached together. So I can have multiple objects attached as one so that when I do create my fish, then it looks more. So what I could even do is have this object in there twice and then, you know, kind of layered one in the front, one in the back, and even mold something in between, you know? So there's, I think that there's some cool ways that you can just make something like that work. It may not be the best as far as what 3D objects. I know one thing that I've been asking from day one is when can we, you know, upload our own 3D objects? Because I think that is when there's going to be a huge shift to our creation tool.
Okay, that was going to be my other question. So now, are you able to animate that picture?
Yeah, you should be able to go into Blockly and let me go ahead and label it. That's always like the biggest piece. Like I have to give it a label and say it's available here. And so maybe now I want to, on animation of trout, I can make it transition. I'm moving 1 meter, you know, 1 meter forward. And so now when I go into play and I click my trout, I can make it move. And if you're grouping things up together, then you can have, and I can, by the way, every time I click it, it will move. So you think about like the space that your kids can design here. And if we had it layered, if we had it layered with another object and then filled in the space, it can certainly look a lot more realistic. And that side's flipped around. So we would probably have to grab that object and look, and it's going into that next space. But you know, those are things that our kids are going to figure out. That's all problem solving. Okay, well, what happens when my object, like the Lily was asking, what happens when my object doesn't look right because now it's flipped over when I'm rotating it around?
Right.
So I think that like here, the logic of what's happening and some of the variables that we're dealing with are certainly going to be part of them exploring this space to figure out how to solve the problem that they're running into.
Okay. All right. That is awesome. That is exactly what I needed so that I can help that class a little bit better, because I played for, like I told you, I played with it for about 20 minutes and I could get certain things to happen, but I really just needed someone to sit down and show me. So
yeah, no, I'm there. And I could never get Blockly to work. I was like, I am just dumb. The moment that a student showed me about naming, I was like, oh my gosh, my world's opened up. So that seems to be the biggest piece, that hurdle of first getting past that with Blockly. But as soon as you turn that on and you have it available, I think it's just a matter of like, well, what happens when I try this? And, you know, most of the time it's like, that's a piece of what they need to do. It's, you know, like them learning this tool is a part of that growth too, and them exploring like how coding is used in order to demonstrate, you know, the sea level or whatever it might be. That environment that they're exploring, I think that just adds such another layer of learning, because they're having to make something look realistic. So they have to think about how do I portray this realistically and with the tools that I've been given.
Yeah, and I almost feel like if you had the kids, if they had no coding background whatsoever, if you had them go on code.org and just do the levels of one of the Hour of Code games that they have, they would be good to go.
Yeah.
Like they would, you know, figure that out
Yeah.
pretty quickly because it's so similar. So.
And you know, it's so funny is there are videos out there from CoSpaces on this very thing, on using.
Oh, really? Okay.
But for both of us, we know that it's there, and neither one of us will go and watch it. I think and the truth is, I can watch those things and I'll still never get it. When I get it is when I do it. And I think that's going to be what is going to be the winner. And then once they've had a chance to play and they keep stumbling into problems, then we can bring in some videos and say, hey, this is an option. You know, this is the way that we can try to solve this problem because this is what's available to us. But I think you're so right on with saying that, you know, them getting in there and exploring is going to be the key to them really getting it and being able to move forward. And once you have Blockly, I think the concept of coding all of a sudden becomes just so much more real. It has for me.
It would be awesome if CoSpaces would come up with a like a tutorial that was interactive. So it would import some of those, like the code.org idea of learning how to code that way and how it applies to then the CoSpaces environment, because I mean, the kids would just pick it up so quickly if they were just given those little pieces of information.
You know, it'd be super cool is if our students actually created like challenges inside of CoSpaces and said, this is the first task of figuring this out. This is the second task. Because I think we're likely to watch what our kids have created before we watch what a grown adult that works for the company that doesn't know education or educators or students. You know what I mean? Like totally disconnected. You feel like that's often the case in companies. Not so much in CoSpaces. I mean, they're in Germany. They're fantastic. They've been a part of this whole process. But I think that for the most part, you get people more likely to be involved with a series that has like the challenges from the students themselves. And they're coming up with like crazy awesome stuff, scenes and activities. And I mean, I'm like blown away with what they've been able to come up with that I don't even have a clue how they did it. I can't solve that. Like, how did they work around that? You know, what did they do here? And they may know code. That may be what's going on. But I think ultimately it's just amazing to think what they can show us. In the end, I think we limit them on what we think they're capable of doing, and then they excel. And we're like, can you show me how to do that? Because I don't know how to do that.
Are you able to take an object in a scene and link it to a different scene? So when you click on that object, you go to the next scene?
Yeah, let me go ahead and try to. That's what, when we were just getting started here a minute ago, I was like, what happens when I add a second scene? You know, like, how do I get from one? I'm able to duplicate my scenes. Let's see. I'm curious as to what happens when I'm in that space and how to get from one to the other, because that's something I've never had to use because it's always been just demonstrating the basics of CoSpaces. This is when those moments when you're like, yeah, that's when you should know your stuff before you offer a training on it on YouTube Live. But you know, I'm like, that's why I said up front, I was like, I know nothing. I'm a learner just like you guys. This is what I figured out just by playing.
You could have faked it. No one would have known any better. So it would be awesome.
I'm like, yes, there's totally a way to do that.
It would be awesome to create a game or a mystery or some sort of like, you know what I mean, like a strategic walkthrough of something. If you could create kind of like in Harry Potter when he touches an object and it brings him someplace else, like where you could click on an object in a scene and it brings you to a different scene, and then you can go back and forth. So I don't know if that would work, but that would be really cool.
Yeah, well, they actually have. I've seen people make Breakout EDU inside of CoSpaces. So there's like all these challenges built into their scenes, and in order to get from one scene to the next. So surely there's a way to click on something that eventually gets you to the next screen. And so I think that you know, the fact that people can come up with challenges like Breakout EDU inside of a CoSpaces scene, I think that's just incredible. Like, that's what problem solving that would be required of everybody that participated inside of it. I want to say it's like Nicholas or there, you know, I I know I can't think of who it is off the top of my head, but I remember somebody that has recently created something in the past month or so, Breakout EDU, using CoSpaces. So I think it's absolutely ready. Like, our students are prone to creating incredible stuff. And at this point, with the EDU side, now the other side of it, the maker side of it, I know that you don't have as much in your library. I don't even know if you have the access to, I know you can code, but I don't know if you have the characters that have the easy animation anymore. So, actually I'm going to go into my maker and kind of look at the difference, because that piece right there, I feel like, is a huge incentive to want to have, because it just makes it look a lot more realistic to have your characters animated in that way.
Right.
And there's so many things that you can have them do, and it's just awesome. I'm going to go into one of my scenes here and look at this character. I'm going to add a character and see if in fact I can. Yeah, see, they don't have characters. So, you have just those poly objects, and you have the 3D objects in there. You can still do building blocks, so you can still design something. But I think having characters to be able to give that animation is a huge incentive to want to have realistic scenes, VR scenes inside of EDU.
Mm-hmm.
So,
do you know how much the EDU version is?
It was so cheap. I was really surprised. I think they were like giving it like $2 student per student, something like that. And it wasn't like everybody in your campus has to sign up. It was like, your classroom's using it. You're gonna, we're gonna get it for our students here in this classroom. It's really realistic. I was surprised just because, when we had talked, I was like really bummed that they were gonna have a product that was for paid, but understanding that you have to have product for paid, your company has to function. But when I was told the price, I was like, oh, that's so doable. Like that's something that schools will actually use, because not every teacher is going to use this with their kids, but the ones that will, you're willing to say, yeah, let me, pay out,
right,
$100 for this classroom or whatever. And I hope I'm quoting that right, but I'm pretty sure that's the way it worked. And from what I can gather from their price, as a matter of fact, I can tell you right now, because it's on their, it's actually on their stuff. It says, give me a price, a price quote on that. So they have good prices. They thought, I think, really about, a lot of people are going to use the maker, but the ones that want to have the classroom feature and so much more, like you can look at all your students and what they're doing. It's not something that's just public view anymore. Mm-hmm. You can actually, give them tasks to do and, have a lot more engagement on that side of it. So, okay, it says right now you can sign up for 2 months free, and which is what Denise is doing. But she is signed up as a ambassador as well. And I'm just looking at get licenses. Okay, so the pricing that they have listed is, we're a non-European Union, unfortunately. But if you wanted to do like 50 licenses, it's $75 a year. That's like amazing.
Yeah,
that's what, $1.50? Yeah.
Okay. So
I think that is pretty reasonable. I mean, you could do 450 licenses. I mean, that to me would be like a whole campus, all your students, for the most part, you would have a pretty large campus, or maybe a smaller one in a big city. But, that's a lot of kids that have licenses, and that's making the assumption that everybody, but if it's your whole district and you're getting it figured for certain teachers that will utilize it. And, from there, once you get them using it and finding out the benefit, then you can assess like how many licenses you would want in the future.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's awesome.
I'm going to screen share this with you real quick, because I think that would be an important piece, because guess what? If the prices change, we're going to be like, we got you on YouTube Live. So, if you come over here and you're looking at the 50 licenses, you have access to all of that information. I don't know where you would get a voucher code, but I'm making the assumption that they have kind of some deals that they're working out at conferences. But then you can come over here and just decide how many licenses you'll need. If you're looking at 100 for your district, because you're working with 3 different teachers, or maybe at the high school level, you know, this 100 is what they need because they have 100 kids cycling through. I don't know. You know, it just really depends on your classroom. But I do know for the maker side, what I was told is it's not, you can't have your login on multiple devices. So it can't be like, oh, 15 people are on my account right now, which was the case before. I think they have it limited to 3. So, you know, that I think a lot of people were trying to figure out ways to have access to what the kids were making and not having to worry about the cost. And so when they became EDU, so they were like, well, this is the way I can look and view what they're all doing, have access to my class, because it's all in my account. But then what one kid did could affect everybody. You know, it affects all the class and all the stuff. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining, Mandy. And I think we talked and covered a lot. I learned some things. And I hope Denise's class learned some things too. And we'll certainly continue to collaborate and see as they progress and grow. And maybe one day they'll get some mixed reality in there too. And we'll actually see all this stuff in our space, which would be amazing.
That would be awesome.
All right. Well, have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.